All right, my friends, welcome to another video lesson. In this final lesson in the chroma key masking and effects process, we're going to actually insert some images behind our interview subject here that have to do with what he's talking about. So let's give you a little background on what's going on here. Basically, I want to tell you a little story. I'm going to turn off the effects here and tell you why we got to this situation here. So a few years ago, a partner of mine and I were hired to do a promotional video for the San Diego Food Bank. And this is their spokesperson here. And we went to interview him at their headquarters down in San Diego. And we thought that we were going to have a nice large area. They told us that they were going to put us in a large conference room, as a matter of fact. So we thought we'd have all the room that we would need to set up our equipment, cameras, audio. We had a teleprompter cart person with us. We thought we'd be able to set all that stuff up and be able to frame our subject appropriately because we'd have all the room that we would need. Well, when we got there, the conference room they put us in was actually pretty small and it was full of stuff. It had a very large conference room table in it with a bunch of chairs around it that we could not remove from the room. And they had a bunch of file cabinets and other things that were being stored in there. So we ended up getting crammed into a tiny little corner. So we had my partner with the camera, multiple lights, myself doing audio, and then we also had a person with a teleprompter cart, a large cart, all crammed into a very small area in the corner of this room. So we ended up not being able to frame this person the way that we really needed to. That's why all this garbage is over here in the left side of the screen. So once we got there and saw the situation, we used that famous expression that you hear all the time. Well, we'll just fix it in post. And that's what we're doing here. We're fixing a pretty bad situation in post. So because this is a promotional video for a food bank, what we want to do is put imagery behind our interview subject here that has to do with what he's talking about. So if we head over to our project panel here and twirl down our graphics bin, you can see there are, let me get rid of this adjustment layer here. We've got several images that have to do with what he's talking about. We've got some canned food here. We've got some food on a pantry shelf. We've got racks in a distribution warehouse where they distribute food to different entities throughout the county, and then more racks of food in a warehouse. So we're going to put all this stuff behind our interview subject. And now that we've got him cut out nice and clean, we can do that. So I'll turn the effects back on here. And what we want to do is put these images behind him, starting with the cans here. And we've got 4 images to deal with. So we need to look at the length of the time our subject is on screen and kind of split this up in 4 parts, 4 relatively equal parts. So if I select the space here, where I'm going to put this stuff, which is the same length as the clip above it, and I use my / key, I can see that I've got 31 seconds and 25 frames. So almost 32 seconds. Well, what's 32 divided by 4? That's 8. So about 8 seconds for each one of these images. In fact, what I'm going to do is the first 3 will be exactly 8 seconds long, and then the last one will take up whatever's remaining, 7 seconds and 25 frames, something like that. So I want to get these in here at exactly 8 seconds a piece for the first 3. So I'm going to remove my in and out from the timeline here. And I'm going to go back to the beginning of where I want to fill, mark an in, I for in, and now I want to advance my playhead enough so that I can get exactly 8 seconds in between my in and out. Well, I'm at 1 second right now. So I think intuitively we would think, well, I need 8 seconds. I'll go to second number 9. 9 minus 1 is 8. Well, what you'll get if you do that is actually 8 seconds and 1 frame, because you have to count the frame that you're on. So what you really want to do is go to 8 seconds and 29 frames and mark it out there. All right, so if I go to 9 seconds,
370,000 people.
I can tell some of you don't believe me, right? All right, so If I go to 9 seconds and I mark my out there, O for out, look, I have 8 seconds and 1 frame. But if I go back 1 frame to 8 seconds and 29 frames and mark my out there, I have exactly 8 seconds. So that's how I want you guys to do this. Okay? All right, so you can see my source image here has 12 hours worth of this image. Well, I obviously don't want to use that much. So I'm going to let the timeline determine how much I'm going to use because I've already got my 2 points here. I'm going to put another 3rd point here at the very beginning, mark my in, and I'm going to use my period key to overwrite patch V1 to V1, make my edit, and there it is. Perfect. Now, if I move my playhead back, look, the cans are behind him. Super awesome, right? Now, if I play a little bit, you can see there's little bits that appear on the bottom of the screen. That's because I'm at half resolution right now. If I go to full, they won't show. Okay. All right. So I'm going to go to my next edit point here. This is at 9 seconds. I'm going to mark my in, and I want to add exactly 7 seconds and 29 frames to that. So I need to go to 16:29 for this. I do believe. And marking out. And look, I've got another exactly 8 seconds. Super cool. Now, if you have a numeric keypad on your keyboard, you can do this in a different way. I'll go back to my in point and remove my out point here. If you have a numeric keypad on your keyboard, which if you have a laptop, you probably don't, but if you do, you can hit the plus key that's on that numeric keypad. Okay, not the plus key that you normally expand and contract your timeline with, but the plus key that's over there with your number pad. If you hit that, as soon as you hit that, look at this. Premiere knows that you're putting in time-related data here, all right? And I'm gonna add 7 seconds and 29 frames to this and hit the enter key that is also on that numeric keypad, and it will advance my playhead by exactly that same amount. All right, so I'm again at 16:29, mark my out, and I've got exactly 8 seconds. So you can do it either way. You can do math and drag your playhead over, or you can use the numeric keypad with the plus key if you have it. All right, so let's get some food here. And again, mark an in at the very beginning and do our overwrite edit with the period key. And now we've got the food in there too, cans and food. All right, let's go to the next thing here. Down arrow to line up, mark the in. And so adding 7:29 to this would be 24:29. See, math is coming in handy here, even in a creative capacity. Boom, another 8 seconds. Let's get our food racks and marking in on that. Edit that down. Period key. All right. Cans, food, food racks. Now, all we need to do with our final image here, more racks, is to fill this gap. All right. Now, I happen to know just because mathematically it's 7 seconds and 25 frames, but the easiest thing to do here is just select the gap and use our good friend, the / key, to mark the in and out of that precisely. Now, if I zoom in here, you can see the in's right at the very beginning of the gap. And if I go to my out, Shift O to go out, the out is perfectly lined up at the end. Yes, that is the best way to do this. All right, so / to zoom to full length. And let's edit down our more racks here. Mark an in. And period key, boom, perfectly filled. Okay, so this is cool. So now we've got the stuff behind him. But you know, it's a little weird. It's a little distracting for a couple of reasons. Number one, the quality of this image is pretty bad. All right, it's something that came off of their website, does not look very good. So it's not the greatest thing to put behind him in a professional way. So what we need to do is doctor it up to make it look better. The other thing about it is these cans almost look like they're coming for him. Like, you know, they're about to either topple over on him or, you know, chase him off the screen. So what we want to do is kind of mute them, blur them, bring them into more of a background capacity and help our subject to pop forward away from them in an almost 3D capacity. So we'll select this clip here and we'll go to our effects and we're going to search this time for a blur. Which blur are we going to search for? You all know the best one, right? That's right, Gaussian blur. So we're going to take that blur and drag it on, boom, and head over to our effect controls here. And you can see it's been applied. And of course, the most wonderful control, blurriness, will be utilized to blur this stuff out. So we're going to drag this over to the right, and I think I'm going to go to, I don't know, around 40 or so. So you can still tell that they're cans, but you don't see the low qualityness of the image. Now, this is something that we haven't really discussed before about Gaussian blur. When you're blurring an image that is about the same size as the frame that it's in, you need to use repeat edge pixels. Watch what happens to this sort of dark area around the edges when I click this checkbox here. Boom, it fills it in, okay? It's very important that you do that. Now in this case, the cans are at the bottom level. There's only black behind them. So you just see a kind of dark little frame. But if there was something else, another video clip perhaps, underneath, you would actually see that around the edge of the frame. And we don't want that to happen. So you eliminate that possibility by using repeat edge pixels and it fills it in. Okay, this is cool. It looks better because it's blurred, but I still think it's competing with him a little too much. So what I'd like to do is dim it a little bit. And because it's the bottom level with only black behind it, all I need to do is reduce the opacity of this image and it will darken. So I'm going to take this from 100% to say, I don't know, let's try 80. Nice. Now he's really popping forth from that background. Looks really good. Cool. That's great. Okay, so now I want to do this to all my other images. And rather than go through all these steps, why don't we just copy and paste attributes? Well, that's a great idea. Let's do that. So I'm going to right click on my cans clip, choose copy, and select my food, hold down shift and select food racks and more racks. And then right click and choose paste attributes. Now I want to make sure that my effects, my Gaussian blur, and my opacity are both checked. Nothing else needs to be checked except scale attribute items. You almost always want that checked. So I'll hit OK. And now you can see that has been applied to the other clips as well. Super cool. All right, so we're almost done here. The only thing I still don't like is when I play through from one background to another, it's a rather sudden change. Let's take a look.
People every month. A lot of people are surprised to learn who are,
It just shifts so quickly and so suddenly. I don't really like that.
the working poor, seniors on a fixed income,
Boom, it's just a little bit distracting.
and their dependents. We ask
Instead of doing that, why don't we just dissolve from one to the other? So I'm going to select this clip boundary here, use Shift D to apply my default transition, which in this case is a 24 frame dissolve. I'm going to bring that down to 20. And let's play through and check that out one more time.
1,000 people every month. A lot of people are surprised to learn who are
That looks a lot better. All right, so now what I'd like to do is apply this to my other transitions. Apply this to my other cut points. Instead of going through and applying it and then double clicking and changing the length of every single one of them, instead what I'm going to do is select this transition and copy it, Command or Control C, and select my other two cut points here, the first one and then hold down Shift and select the next one and hit Command or Control V to paste that same transition onto them. Super quick, super easy.
Poor seniors on
Looks way better, much more professional.
and their dependents. We got
Oh yeah, nice. Now all we need to do is fade up and fade down on this because we don't want to just cut from black to our subject.
the Jacobson-Cushman
That's a little weird. All right, so you might think, hey, let's just put a dissolve on here and then put another dissolve here and then zoom in perhaps a little bit here and drag this over so they're both dissolving up at the same time. But look what happens when we do that.
The Jacobson-Cushman
Whoa, look at the area around him. You can see the mask. That does not look good. Not cool at all. All right, so that's not how we're going to do this. Instead, we're going to do it in a different way. We could nest this whole thing and then fade up and down on the nest, but the easiest way to do it is with an adjustment layer. So what we're going to do is go to the new item icon down here, click on adjustment layer, and say yes, we want it to be the same frame size and frame rate as our sequence, and make sure that it's located in our GFX bin, which it is. And then we're going to drag that onto our sequence here, line it up with the edge of our subject here, making sure it starts at the exact same time, and then trim that out all the way to the end. And then we're going to select that and use our keyboard shortcut, Shift D. With the clip selected, it will actually apply the transition to both ends of the clip. And there we go. Now let's look at that fade up.
the Jacobson-Cushman
Clean. Looks really good because the adjustment layer affects everything below it simultaneously with the same value. The problem with doing it the other way is that Premiere processes each of these clips individually, not as one thing. So you get different fade values on each one, and that's why you could see the mask and it looked funky. Using an adjustment layer, it affects everything below it as one thing, so it's nice and clean.
the Jacobson-Cushman St.
Boom, fade down, same thing.
where the next meal is coming from.
Looks great. All right, my friends. So we have gone from a funky green screen setup here to something that is clean and professional. Nice blurred background inserted, dimmed, and then transitions between each of those backgrounds that are non-distracting. So we cleaned up our subject with the Ultra key, masked him off using an opacity mask, then inserted new visual items behind him, used the Gaussian blur effect to make them a little less distracting and overwhelming behind him, and then reduce the opacity of them to dim them down a bit and help our subject to pop forth and pull away from that background. All right, my friends, that's chroma key, masking, and effects. And that does it for this video lesson, my friends. I'll see you again in the next one.